So Nate, what are some of the things you're evaluating when you're taking that time?
So a lot of times it's first off, what is their offer, of course. So I'm evaluating where that is and where I would have liked to be. So what I would generally tell people, and this kind of goes back to a question earlier of, understanding where your job range should be. Uh, it should be about a $20,000 range. You want to keep it pretty broad, and so basically what you're trying to do is most likely the job will be in that minimum to 10,000 range, and then usually you're going to want to try to negotiate it into that kind of second 10,000 range. This Welcome back to Generational Sense. My name is Nate Bellamy, and I'm here with my dad, Brian.
Hey Nate.
Hey, hey. I recently accepted a new job offer, so very excited about that. And so I thought that today's episode of Generational Sense, of course, we'll talk about building generational wealth and kind of the strategies to do that. And I thought a great way to go about that is negotiating your salary for a higher base salary for that new job position if you're in that circumstance. So, like I said, I recently negotiated my job salary, and this was my second time doing so. Both times successful, so I thought it'd be a fun topic to go over because it's one of those things you don't really talk about in college, and a lot of first time, right out of college, when you get that first job offer, you don't think about negotiating your job salary, or you're kind of weary of it, you're scared to, and so I kind of wanted to go through the steps that maybe some of my mentors have told me over the couple years, as well as maybe some experiences that you've had, Dad. So I thought this would be a great topic to go over. So yeah, I guess we can get started with that. So first kind of subject when it comes to salary negotiation of what exactly is it, when times are necessary to do so, and maybe some kind of base rules for it. So first thing that comes to mind when it comes to salary negotiation that I think is very important is when, of course, you should be negotiating a salary for a position. I think that comes into play a lot, of course, when you are maybe more the corporate side of things or even agency side of things, maybe not necessarily an internship or something of that sort of role. So Dad, do you have any kind of thoughts on, going into you getting a job offer, what kind of circumstances maybe would you not think about negotiating a salary?
Yes, I do have a lot of thoughts. So I think the number one thing you have to do in any negotiation is to do your homework
Yeah,
and to know,
absolutely.
what it is you're expecting out of this negotiation and what's reasonable. So specific to this salary question, when you're doing your homework, you have to, of course, research, what are the ranges for this particular industry. Did you do that in your case, Nate?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. So there's actually one resource that I pulled up right before we had our talk today. A lot of recruiting sites or recruitment companies will post a lot of resources online, and this is one of the greatest that I've found for just kind of getting a good idea to start.
Do
And so I
tell.
looked up. Robert Half has basically a salary guide for a lot of good industries. So I'm in the
Okay.
marketing industry. So if you look up Robert Half salary guide, you can go in there, type in your job title in your city, so your area, and it gives you a good rough estimate, basically from the data that they've pulled of what kind of salary you should be expecting, and it also gives it based on your percentile. So whether you've got a lot of experience going for an entry level role, you might be more in the 50th or 75th percentile of people applying for that role based on experience, or even 25 if you're going in with barely enough experience for that manager role, but you're still applying regardless. So that was one resource that I really found important and kind
Just
of
a
cool to get a
website?
good idea. Yeah, if you just look up Robert Half
Okay.
salary guide, and then you can look that up and you're able to kind of find it and type in the
Okay. I'm
details
going.
of
I'll be
position.
back in a few. I'm going to go find out whether or not I should be looking for another job and
All
renegotiate.
right.
I'm just
All
teasing.
right.
All right. So So I did find some other. Have you ever looked at Glassdoor or
Yeah, sure.
PayScale or LinkedIn salaries?
Yep, yep.
You
Those are
like
all great as
Robert
well.
Half better than those, I presume.
Those are all great. I think too, the only difficult part with that, so a lot of times those look for more company based versus actual role based. You can find some that are more role based, but a lot of times, so like if I'm looking up a big, let's just say, I don't know, let's say Starbucks. So if I'm looking up Starbucks, a lot of times for that adjusted salary, I'm seeing a lot of salaries for people that are actually in working in Starbucks versus maybe the corporate side of things. So it's a little bit harder to find those exact details, as well as location based, which is why I like kind of the recruiter standpoint because they give that aspect to it. But those are also great for getting a good idea, of comparing. I wouldn't want to use just one resource for my research. Look at several areas to see what they're saying the kind of average is, because
I
that's
heard
where I've found some good
I heard you
success.
say we need to research three things. Let me ask you if this is what you did. You looked at the geographical area.
Yep,
That's
yep,
important. You looked at
absolutely.
the specific company. You looked at the role, the type of position, in other words. And, I just thought of a fourth thing that I bet you looked at, and that is the industry, like that particular industry.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
so
Because
if
there's two different things. Like for me to look at for marketing, there's agency side of marketing, and then there's corporate side of marketing. So those could have for
two
the
different
same
industries.
position. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's basically two different industries in the industry. So if I just look up the role there and not look up the industry, I could get
And
two
then,
completely different
and then if
results.
you're looking at the corporate side, marketing execs at Starbucks or in coffee companies or in fast food companies may have a different salary range than marketing execs in tech companies or something like
Absolutely.
that. So that's like different aspects of the industry. Like what path in the industry are you taking? Like agency versus corporate versus small town entrepreneur.
Right.
Um, Also, exactly what industry are you in? Who are you serving? Okay, so that's our research component. Anything? What about researching benefits? Did you research the benefits for like the particular position you were looking at?
So benefits are tricky. So a lot of times, I might have to cut this out. Stan was going crazy with the blinds.
My
All right, ask that question again, and I'll just clip that.
Sure. So, are what about the benefits? Is there a way for you to look at and research what the benefits might be for the type of position you're looking for ahead of time so that you can be prepared to negotiate that or at least understand how those benefits will relate to the salary that you're going to ask for? I mean, if a
Yeah,
company gives you the whole world for free as benefits, then maybe you're willing to work for a lot less.
yeah, absolutely. So benefits are a huge part of understanding your salary. I think going into, because like you said, if you've got a lot of benefits, especially like health benefits or really great 401k match or something of that sort, then you're going to consider maybe taking a little bit less of a salary, because you're going to have those great benefits and it's going to set you up better for the future. So when it came into the research and really kind of understanding, it's really just understanding what those benefits are. It's really difficult to kind of base your expected salary going into it because so many companies have so many different varying benefits. So it really depends. Right as they're giving you that offer, they'll send you most of the time the benefits package as well. So they'll send you the base salary, the benefits package, and just what to expect with it. And then so you're going into that, and you have to kind of look at it and see, okay, where can I negotiate, and where can I understand where I'm really at salary wise. So a lot of times for this, what I would suggest from my experience, you're gonna most likely have some decent benefits wherever you are. I would suggest go at it from a stipend standpoint. So a lot of companies are more willing to actually adjust. Maybe they'll give you a phone stipend or a gym stipend or a work from home if you're a remote position. The stipends are a great way to kind of grow your benefits beyond maybe the usual 401k or savings accounts, health savings accounts, and things like that. So that's kind of what I would suggest going into considering benefits and the negotiation phase
Yeah.
of it.
Let's put a
Really
let's put a
because
pin in that and remember
yeah,
that when we start talking about the actual negotiation, right?
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
absolutely,
so we're getting ready. We've done a little research. We kind of know at least whether or not this company is going to offer some benefits and maybe generically what they tend to offer, health insurance, 401k, but not the exact numbers, not just what the quality
right.
is. So what's the next step? Do we need to know like what our own value is and sort of put a pen and paper to that and be able to compare ourselves to other potential applicants? And does that come into play?
Yeah, and I will say in my opinion, that's probably one of the lesser points nowadays, because that company already has their set range, and so that really comes to play in the interview process more than it does the salary negotiation. If you know your value going into the interview process and they ask that question, usually during your first interview with a recruiter of what your expected salary range is, you need to be transparent and tell them that this is what my range is. And if it doesn't match and they're significantly lower, then that's probably not the job you should be
So
interviewing for.
there may be a mismatch between what you thought the job was as far as skills and experience and all of
Right,
that and what they're thinking they're looking for in the way of applicants. And if that's completely mismatched, then you may not find that the salary and benefits, you may be overqualified, in other words, or or you may go into one you're underqualified and you're not going to get that job. So,
right.
and so I guess as part of our going back to our homework that we did in our research, make sure that the job you're applying for is something that you're already in the right range. And then you're able to negotiate. So if you're just in the wrong place where you're overqualified, you're going to be taking a job. You're not going to be able to negotiate enough salary for what your skills are.
Right.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so we want to know our value, but we want to match that ahead of time.
Yep.
I guess that's
Yep.
kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like if if
Generally,
we have a PhD, don't apply for a Bachelor of Science job. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Right. No, absolutely. It's usually, understanding, and this was something big for me going into my career field, especially the corporate side of things, is understand the levels of what your roles can be and work up to.
Because
It
you
goes
actually
from,
applied up a bit for a normal college grad, didn't you? Because of some
yeah.
things you had in your experience.
Yeah, no, I had really strong experience, a ton of intern experience, not just one internship. So I had a lot of really great experience, and so I actually ended up applying for not only just specialist level roles, which are usually pretty entry level, but also some associate manager and even manager positions. And so what happened was for me was I ended up getting a manager position, but it was for a smaller company. So this was the first position that I took right out of college. But due to having that extra experience, I was able to go straight to a manager at maybe a smaller company. Now it's probably equivalent to a specialist position, which I'm moving into now at a bigger company. But, I'm able to do that instead of having to start at a small company specialist and then moving to a big company specialist. So it's, food for thought on coming in with your experience. But I knew my value. I knew that I can compete for and be a competitor in those larger roles, maybe at a smaller company, as well as the more entry level at a big company. So understand your experience, because that could open a whole new door of positions that you could be looking at applying
Yep.
for.
That helps you scale up before you even apply for that job. And then, of course, you have to use all of those skills and experience to convince that interviewer that they should make you the offer. So you get an
Right.
offer,
Yeah.
right? What do you immediately accept it, or do you take some time to evaluate it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the big things that I wanted to really break down for everybody watching and listening, because they might not know how the process works yet, because they might not have been through it yet. So, how the process usually works is you get through the interview process. Usually, most of the time, I think it's very few times that nowadays they'll email you first. Usually, the recruiter, wherever the hiring manager is, usually recruiter if you're at a big enough company, will give you a call. So once they've decided, they'll give you a call and they'll give you that offer. You don't want to accept it over the phone. You want to be very excited about it. Say, hey, I'm really interested in this position. I'm excited to be able to receive an offer. Could you send me over the details via an email just so I can look at it and think over it for a couple days? So generally, you give them kind of a time frame of what they'd be looking for and maybe ask, when do y'all need to know my answer by, just so you know kind of how much time you've got. But generally, you want to get
Don't
back
want
to
to
them.
ruin it by not responding in a timely manner.
Right, right. So generally, you want to even
Do
proceed
they,
what they asked to have it in by. But generally, the main thing there is moving it from that phone call to an email, so you can look at it and take more control of that actual offer.
do you pretty much always respond to that email in writing saying, hey, thank you for this offer. I'm going to take, you know, a day or two to evaluate it and then respond?
So I usually say all of that on the phone. I just ask her, so they'll explain the offer over the phone. I'll usually just say, "This is great. I'm excited. Before I accept, could you send this over, via email and just in detail so I can see, all the benefits, all of the salary range. That way I can break it down myself and see maybe where I could increase on the negotiation side."
I know with you recently moving to a new job and you've had a number of internships and other jobs over the years. Uh, have those pretty much always been by telephone? The initial offer?
Yeah, yeah, I think just about every position that I've gotten, it was
Okay.
a
So
call before it
that's
was an
very
email.
direct. So you really
Yeah,
do. If you're not good at being polite and reflective, then you might want to practice that a little bit.
absolutely.
Maybe just practice scripting out. Thank you so much. I'm really excited. Can I take a day or two to review this offer? Uh,
Yeah. It's
and
nerve-wracking because a lot
what
of
it
times you don't want to lead them on and say, "Oh, yeah, I want it, but let me push this back a little bit," because especially if you're excited for that first base salary offer, but you
if
may
you
be able
haven't
to get
been
a little
eating
bit
well
more.
lately, then it's going to be hard to
Yeah.
procrastinate a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it pushed, for example, like this past one that I would negotiated, it pushed, if I accepted on Wednesday when I got the call, I would have started the hiring process then for actually getting, things rolling. But it ended up pushing it until like Friday at like 4:30. So I almost pushed it to the next week. Just because of the negotiation. So it is nerve wracking because you don't want to lose the chance of losing that position. But I think there's a lot more nerves than it is, and just kind of being able to control the excitement and think about where you're headed with that call, and it helps a lot to practice for sure.
So Nate, what are some of the things you're evaluating when you're taking that time?
So a lot of times it's first off, what is their offer, of course. So I'm evaluating where that is and where I would have liked to be. So what I would generally tell people, and this kind of goes back to a question earlier of, understanding where your job range should be. It should be about a $20,000 range. You want to keep it pretty broad. And so basically what you're trying to do is most likely the job will be in that minimum to 10,000 range. And then usually you're going to want to try to negotiate it into that kind of second 10,000 range. This is what I've typically done. It depends on the role. It
So you're
depends.
saying that for a particular job, you may have done your research before you ever even applied and known that the range for that particular position is $50,000 to $70,000, for instance, and maybe you get an offer of 57,000. So now you feel like if you applied for this knowing that range and you applied for this knowing your value, that more than likely you felt like going into it, you should be above that $60,000 mark, closer to that.
Or at. Yeah.
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 If
That's generally kind of in my head what I'm thinking.
yeah.
Now, I may be completely wrong on that. That's my experience from my past two negotiations of what I've seen and
Uh-huh.
been able to kind of do. You know, whether they post their salary range or not, if they don't post it, you should be asking before you tell them what yours is during that first interview, which is a part of the negotiation as well, because you don't want to give them, too much leeway.
But you're trying to start at least average,
Yes.
hopefully above average. But if and that may, to what extent do you think your value has anything to do with where you wind up?
So, I mean, I think my value is accurate. I think most entry level roles for the experience that I have or specialist roles where I'm at a large company, I've got a lot of experience going in, but it's still more of an entry level role. I think it should be for my industry around the 65 to 70 like range. And so that was right where I landed. And so I negotiated to the top of that range. And that's kind of really what you want to do. And that's where a lot of the research comes in because you have to know how, like you said, the four kind of things that really play into it. And that's how you kind of know where you want to end up and kind of what to rebuttal in your counter offer. So let's kind of
Yeah.
get into that a little bit when it comes to your counter offer. I
Yeah.
know I mentioned a couple of things, that you should take consideration of when deciding your base salary, but generally you're depending on what the initial offer, if it's a really good initial offer, and you would be very happy with that, I would say probably 5,000 more, depending on what the range is probably max you want to go. Now, my first position, I counter offered 10,000 more, but that's because it really was too low of an offer for me. So I wanted to be where I just thought I deserved. So I offered 10,000 more in hopes that I could get 10,000 more, but it ended up being the halfway in between. And so that's generally what you kind of want to aim for, and a good idea to go about it. You may get a strike and hit that amount that you counter offered, but a lot of times you're going to be assuming that they're going to counter offer back with a kind of middle ground of what you were initially offered and then that final offer. So as far as the salary goes, that's kind of what you want to be aiming for. Once again, that really depends on the company. That depends on what you're expecting. If they already, like I said, come out the gate with the highest you're really expecting for the role and what you would really be excited about, maybe just offer 1,000 or two more just to see if they'll budge any. Always negotiate at least once, though. Don't just accept the first offer because most companies aren't giving you their highest amount that they have budgeted for that role. So always always negotiate once. You don't want to counteroffer twice. You only want to counteroffer once.
If a company counters you and says we can't budge on the salary, what is there anything else you would negotiate? Would you negotiate flexibility, maybe working remotely, paid time off?
Absolutely. So that was one thing that I did in my first role was there's several things that you can negotiate. Once again, I mentioned earlier in the conversation of stipends. So these are one-time payments, and this can be like a bonus, like a sign-on bonus, or it can be a phone stipend. So you pay your phone bill $50 a month. Maybe it's a field marketing position, so you're going to be using your phone to call franchisees and things like that, and they recognize that. So negotiating a phone stipend each month, it makes sense. So you really want to kind of look at the role and see what makes sense for that role and see if you can negotiate maybe the small pots of money here and there. Because if it's not adding on to your salary, that's not going to be a consistent growth of that cost of you in future years. So they're a lot more willing to do that. Like a sign-on bonus, that's a one-time $500 to $1,000 or whatnot. So they're going to be a lot more willing to give you that to $1,000 versus adding that onto your salary, because then it won't be recurring. So it's you kind of want to consider those, as well as like you were mentioning, uh, PTO or paid time off. If it's a lower amount or you want to negotiate more, that's a great way to do it, depending on what their current PTO offer is for you. But yeah, there's plenty of things you can do. It really just depends on what they begin by offering you.
Yeah. And there are some non-monetary things that a company might be able to put out there for you. Like, I know you're very interested in being challenged and growing and getting regular promotions into better marketing positions. So you can negotiate to some extent what may happen in the future. Maybe ask for a review in 3 months and ask to be considered for a raise then. Kind of set them up to know that you're not satisfied and that you want to be able to move up and forward, and see how receptive they are to that, because that could help you in deciding whether to accept the offer, too, right? I mean, if you get a sense that you're not going to go anywhere in that company because they're not willing to reconsider after a few months or a year, or they're not willing to talk about what your future positions in the company might be if you're successful, then that might be a red flag that, hey, if they're underpaying and they're not looking at what my future with this company is going to look like in a way that's going to be financially good for me and challenging for me, then, I mean, is that a reason why you might say, well, this is not the right position, this is not the right company?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was one of the reasons that I kept looking in my first job, because there wasn't going to be really anywhere that I could grow, and continue maybe to grow within the company for at least probably 5 years, just because of where the company status was at. So there wasn't really much they could offer there. However, it was probably more desperation in that moment because I was ready to move on and get my career started. So I went ahead and took it. But if that were to be a position now where I already have a job and I'm looking to take on another position, that's absolutely something you should take into account if you're somebody like me and you really are looking to grow. That's a big part of that negotiation side of understanding what the role really is offering for your future growth as well. So that's a great point, and that's something that I've had to take into consideration as well.
Well, I like something you were kind of alluding to there, and that is, what options do you have on your, it's like if you go buy a car, one of the ultimate negotiating tools is to know that you're willing to walk out of that showroom without the
Yep.
car. I
Yep.
actually did that one time. There was a van that your mom and I were shopping for. They were asking 18 grand for it, and they had come down to about 16,000, and we weren't willing to pay that. We had offered them our
Yeah.
max, which I think was like 14.5, and so we just honestly we were just leaving. And it really wasn't even a negotiation tactic. We were just
Yeah.
leaving because we
Like,
weren't
all right,
interested in
well, we
buying the
can't get what
car
we want.
for that price.
Right.
It was, thankfully for us, we had the ultimate power because we weren't emotionally tied to the car. And I think
Yeah.
that's an important tip for jobs as well. And so we were leaving, and the daggum salesman chased us out the door and stopped us and said, "Okay, we'll sell it to you for 14.5." So, the same thing if you're, like you said, you already had a decent position. And I remember encouraging you to, on some levels, to take that position maybe
Yeah.
because of the idea that you really don't know for sure what the culture of a company is going to be, what may happen once you have the job, what opportunities they may offer you. And so it's always worth, a roll of the dice to buy that beater of a job, you might say, like the used car, if you can afford to, or you really need a car, or you really need a job, you go do it, and you never know, you might find yourself really happy with it, and
Absolutely.
in this case, you didn't, and you're moving on, but you did have that bird in the hand. Now, when you're shopping for the next position, that if you get the wrong feeling, you can just walk away. That's a powerful place to be. Um,
Absolutely.
and that's why it's nice to maybe have more than one offer if possible. But if you're not in that situation, getting experience, growing your skills, getting another certification, getting some more education, whatever you can do to make yourself more valuable, then you're going to end up enticing more buyers for you so that you have more negotiating power, right?
Absolutely. And that goes into one thing that I will stand by. It's easier to get a job when you have a job versus when you don't have a job. I will stand by that because I think that mainly alludes to the fact if you're able to get a job that you really want when you don't have a job. I know there's a lot of pressure with layoffs and things like that going on, but to get the job that you really want and be able to pick and choose is really a luxury of when you have a position currently. And so I would push everybody to just keep looking and just keep applying to stuff, even if it's, if you're happy where you are or whatnot. At least just network and practice your interviews and things like that, because you don't know when the next position that it may be your dream position or something, your dream company, that might come along that you can apply for. And coming into that confident is very important, and that goes all the way through the negotiation from the first interview through the last. And that really is what negotiation comes down to, is how confident you are, in who you are and what you have to offer. And I think you'd probably agree with that if you're not confident in your skills and where you should be through your research, it's going to be a lot harder to come up with a number, and you're probably just going to bypass that and accept right off the bat, which isn't the worst case scenario. Obviously, you still were able to accept a role, but be confident, do your research, and I think that goes a lot into it.
Yeah. So, how did you make your counter?
Yeah. Okay. So, counter wise, I did a counter email. So I just responded to after I got off the phone call. She sent me that in-depth email, and then I sent a counter email. So broke down first. I explained that I'm very excited for the offer, very excited to join the team. Maybe throw a sentence in there reflecting on the interviews. So be very polite about it, be very accepting and appreciative of the offer they originally gave you, and then kind of lay out, very cleanly, new proposed basically offer, counter offer. Yeah, your counter offer, but
Here's
be
what I'm
very,
looking
very
for.
clear about it.
Yeah.
So even do bullet points. That's what I usually do. So a bullet point, this is what I would like to be at. Salary offer, go up, and then any other maybe stipends or pre-approved time off or anything of that sort. Both times, I've got a wedding coming up, so I asked before I even got the position, I would like this time off to make sure that wasn't going to be an issue, and that has come into play. So lay it all out for them, and then just be confident with your message. Once again, be very polite, thank them, and send it back over. Now, usually if there's a recruiter, they're going to have to talk to the HR team. They're going to have to, make sure it all is smooth and what their maybe counter might be. But just be confident, be polite, and be very clear on what your counter offer is. And then they should respond saying, either we can't do this or, we can, we're excited. I actually received for this position a phone call back after with the new offer, but my role previously, I just got another email back with their counter offer back. So it just depends on the company and the role there, and you can accept. I would not suggest, once again, I wouldn't suggest doing another counter offer. If you're having to do a second counter offer, that goes back to where you first were in your interviews of, should I be actually applying for this position or not? If you're having to counteroffer because you feel like the initial offer is too low, or the counteroffer is too low, then it was probably too low of a position for you in the first place to be applying for. But
Is it possible that you really would like to make the move, but you really aren't going to make it unless you reach a certain increase or change of
yeah,
salary? And I mean, in that case, could you make that one more offer and say, hey, this is a move in all politeness that I'd like to make,
yeah,
but under my circumstances, I'm only able to make it if at this under these terms.
yeah,
And make that last counteroffer and just see if they understand and are willing, but only if you
yeah, yeah.
genuinely mean it. I agree with
That
you.
yeah,
You
I
know,
do agree
but
with
if,
that.
yeah,
Yeah. No, I the one place I've seen that I would absolutely do that is if it's a relocation, but they don't offer relocation.
hmm
So, for example, I was just interviewing for a position in Orlando. I'm in the Atlanta area. They don't have relocation. So I told myself if I don't get this other position that I was, interviewing for, uh, if I didn't get that position, I did get this position. Uh, it's relocating. There's going to be costs in that. I have to make sure that I'm getting an amount that's going to make it worth actually making that move, actually relocating. And I had to make that clear. If I weren't able to get that, and if I didn't make that clear in the negotiation, uh, then I mean that's their loss. They're going to have to go with the next person. Uh, but that's also that goes back to understanding your value. You can't undervalue yourself, and you can't undervalue that move, that relocation. It's expensive to move. I think most people know that, especially if you're breaking a lease or having to hire movers or anything like that. It's expensive, so you have to take that stuff into account. So I would absolutely agree with that. I think there are certain one-time conditions and stuff like that where that does come into play, where you might have to send more than one.
yeah. I know I've had a situation in my past where I considered moving to another quote company, um,
Yeah,
and but I was only interested in doing. I liked where I was, and
yeah,
I was only interested in doing it if I truly felt like it was going to improve my circumstances greatly. And I felt a great deal of loyalty to my current position. And so that meant that there was going to have to be certain criteria met. And so I laid that out in the interview, and it was unable to be met. But it was, it was friendly at the time, and so there may be times where that may not have come out as early as it did for me, to where I didn't ever even get the offer because they couldn't afford to meet my terms. But yeah, so at some points you do need to know what it is you're willing and not willing to do, and what you want.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I guess you get the counter that's acceptable to you, and you're in the position where you're done negotiating. Do you get the final terms in writing before you accept it?
So I did not. So I accepted when they sent over that, or when they called back with the counter. Reason being is that I already had pretty much all the details from the previous, uh, basically, email that she sent me. So I knew all the benefits. I knew everything in addition to what I was asking for the salary amount. So uh, I did not. I went ahead and accepted. I probably should have gotten it in writing first, but obviously, most of the time, what they'll do is you can accept the offer over phone or whatnot, but then they'll send it in writing regardless. So before it's official, they'll send it over to you as an offer letter and you'll sign that and then it'll be official. So you can accept it without actually accepting it. Usually they'll send it over in writing to finalize everything. So yes and no, I guess I did. I
Yeah, I mean,
accepted it, but
ultimately
yeah.
everything's in writing before you go start work.
Right,
Okay.
absolutely. So yeah.
Well, and that may be important depending on the type of job. You're working for large companies, so clearly it's going to be in writing before you start work. But for somebody that's working for a small business, you may need to go to that company and say, "Hey, I need this in writing, so I know before I quit my other job that this is solid."
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing too, is with the stuff in writing. Uh, it's very important to, this is a red flag that I've seen at some companies that I've applied for and even gotten offers for, was, if they don't send you a benefits package of some sort, or lay that out for you, ask those questions during the offer and negotiation to clarify. If they're still not clarifying those for you, be very weary of it. They may not be very good, or they may not exist. So ask those questions if they don't send you a benefits package, but most companies nowadays do send you that package during the offer as well. So just another thing to take note of that I've seen that was a red flag to me.
And it may be okay in that circumstance to sit down and say, let's write all this out before I come take the position. Because if that is the case, you're probably dealing with a small enough company that you can talk to the boss and say, "Hey, I want to write this down, and that way I don't make this move. I don't move myself until without kind of seeing it and knowing that everything is like I expect." I
Right.
think that's fair, and if that, it's like I tell students all the time, if you're being treated like a slave, then you need to look for another job,
Yeah, for sure.
or else you need to go get some more education and put yourself in a position where you don't have to accept that. Maybe you have to accept it for a time in life, but please don't, leave yourself in the circumstance where others can trample on you and treat you like dirt. Try to, work your way into the skills you need, the education you need, the certifications you need to um, have some say so in the way that you're going to be treated in any job. So,
Absolutely.
um, well, Nate, I enjoyed that
Yeah,
discussion, and I'm glad you
I
got
did too.
a new position that you're happy with. Uh,
Absolutely.
have you started yet?
So I'll start in 2 weeks. So I put my 2 weeks in on last Friday, which we can. I don't know if that really ties into generational wealth, but there's definitely another topic we could talk about at some point. Yeah, I put in
Giving
my two
notice?
weeks. Yeah, give me notice. It's more important than you think on how to do it. So, but that's anyways. So yeah, I did put in my 2 weeks, and so
Definitely want to
another
leave
thing
on good
too.
terms if you can, I presume.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it
I
was
imagine that was
all
tricky
good.
in your circumstance.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't necessarily tricky. I think my hiring manager was on the same page as me for why I was leaving and whatnot. So I guess not my hiring manager, but anyways. So yeah, all went well, all went smooth. So I put in my 2 weeks, and I'll start in 2 weeks. So I would suggest, actually, this is another thing before we completely wrap up. Another thing you can, if you have this that break. Uh, Ask for basically a week break between it after you put in your 2 weeks to when you would start the next position, if you're able to, and take a vacation or something. You can always use your sign-on bonus that you negotiated or something like that, and take a little mini vacation. Me personally, I'm saving for a wedding right now, so all my extra money's going towards that, so I don't have the money to go on a
But you,
vacation
you
right
didn't want
now.
the break, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, see, I
Keep,
wanted to go straight in, and I'm
yeah,
excited for the position
keep me
anyway,
to
so
work.
yeah.
Very good.
But anyways, well,
All
that'll
right.
be a wrap for today's episode of Generational Sense. Thank y'all for listening in, and I hope you found this useful. Don't forget to subscribe or share it with somebody interested in negotiating their next job salary. And if you do have any questions or topic suggestions, feel free to drop us a message or leave a comment. So, thank y'all
I
for
enjoyed
listening
getting to
in.
talk with you.
Me as well.